Before I knew what I wanted to do, I'd been doing it for a few years. For me, it began with the writer Thomas Wolfe, or at least it narratively would be easier to use him as a starting block. There were others though. As a child, I was naturally drawn towards books. Whether these books were the right or wrong books is up for debate, but nevertheless, a lot of childhood memories have been accompanied by some form of written material. I read the typical books consistent with any developing childish mind of my time, but it wasn't until I read John Lydon's No Blacks, No Irish, No Dogs that I was placed into the trajectory of taste that I still feel like I am following today. I had discovered the Sex Pistols around the age of 14, and after replaying their album Nevermind the Bollocks, watching their documentary The Filth and the Fury, and finding all possible Sex Pistols interviews I could online, I got together enough money to order a second-hand battered copy of frontman John Lydon's autobiography. I think I got it from eBay. The book itself was another avenue towards experiencing what it was like to be in the Sex Pistols. That in itself was great, yet it was also the first time I was viscerally aware of the fact that a book was not some unconquerable medium. It may be silly to say that considering I was a teenager, but for me the information and entertainment was not found on the shelves, but on the TV or the computer. Before No Blacks, No Irish, No Dogs, reading was presented to me as something boring people did in dull environments. The idea that 1, I could enjoy reading if the subject interested me, and 2, the person I was a fan of was championing books and reading despite having a personality that I ignorantly thought would not align with my perception of a man of words, was incredible to me. The rebellion thus did not form in the negation of reading, but in reading the books that interested me personally, that somehow scratched some sort of voyeur/musical itch I never knew I had, and from whence it came is itself a bigger mystery. Needless to say, I read more. Joy Division, The Cure, Black Flag, The Jesus and Mary Chain, Nirvana, and honestly more than I could remember. I found a biography or autobiography for all of them. I had found a way to ease myself into the boring process of reading, because let's face it, reading is boring. Reading is a slow burn of entertainment that few kids want to let invade their spare time. I was fortunate that I wanted the information enough to sit through it, eventually developing a liking for the reading process. I had conditioned myself to appreciate having read, even if the reading was sometimes a chore. When the biographies dried up, I wanted to continue reading. I thus took a minor step away from the objectively written and easy to digest biographies and began reading the books of Henry Rollins. A slight pivot, but a pivot nonetheless. Once again, there was something gluing me to the books. The content was great, the experience of reading was great, but I didn't know what this combination was saying about me. Something about the journal entries of a man hopscotching around the world, getting into dangerous scenarios, playing shows, and writing it all down retrospectively was giving the 15 to 16-year-old me dopamine hits, urging me to keep reading. But again, the content dried up. There were only so many Henry Rollins books I could read, plus they can be quite hard to come by for a UK resident. And so, I took my next leap. I distanced myself once again from what had become the norm and found literature. 2 books kicked this off: Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward Angel and Henry Miller's Black Spring. Both books have been mentioned by Rollins. In what exact books of his I cannot quite remember though. The latter, Black Spring, was a rough starting point. I didn't get it. The former, Look Homeward Angel, is now my favourite book. It was one of those right place, right time type reads, where the future is uncertain. It still is actually. And that anxious anticipation of its arrival makes you want to throw yourself into something new and adventurous. Look Homeward Angel had all the right elements. Naturally, one book led to the other. In finding recommendations, I looked to those who I admired and sought out their reading lists. I read Hemingway, Dostoevsky, Mishima, Bukowski, Thompson, Palahniuk, Selby, Orwell, Camus, etc., all with mixed success. And to this day, the to-be-read list continues to grow far beyond what a slow reader like me could ever possibly hope to read in a lifetime. In a 1993 interview, David Foster Wallace once said that a big part of serious fiction's purpose is to give the reader, who like all of us is sort of marooned in her own skull, imaginative access to other selves. I think that quote applies to non-fiction too. Any other medium can achieve this, but reading is the closest you can get to understanding a foreign thought process. Therefore, the purpose of reading is in learning through the lives of others. Reading taught me that before the internet, before smartphones, and before we could even fly, the world was not a black and white showreel. The world did not begin when I was put in it, nor was I the only person ever to feel the way I do. People change with their generation, but the little things, anxieties, insecurities, ambitions, have resided in all the minds long before I came along. Reading taught me this, and it makes life a little easier. I would never discourage the other fun aspects of life, and I'm not here to lecture you on how the answer to life is found in the pages of those dusty books you pesky kids refuse to read. What I am saying is that reading made me more empathetic and emotionally mature, whilst giving me a north star to follow through the bullshit letdown of reality. Whether transitioning to the next stage of education, attending the funeral of a family member, or getting a job I hate, there was always one easing pleasure sitting at home on the bedside table: a book. And like any reading enthusiast, eventually I figured, I'm gonna try and write too, only to swiftly learn that it is not a glamorous pursuit. The romanticism of photographs displaying my favourite authors hunched over typewriters to some tropical backdrop or book-filled room made it look easy. Regardless, I continued. Knowing what to write about is always the hardest thing for me. As much as I like to read novels, I didn't want to write them. Poetry was never my thing either. I also didn't feel qualified enough to have an informative thing to say. I'm not a Jordan Peterson, Ryan Holiday or Robert Greene type. I wasn't looking at myself as someone who was going to tell you the answers. I simply do not have the life experience necessary to do so, nor the credentials. Thus, it took a while of trying writing prompts, reporting on gigs I performed in and attended, doing book/music reviews, until I slowly formed an idea of what my niche, my edge, something that I could do without feeling like a fraud, was. That is what this channel is. My original plan was to write book reviews, but I soon began making, for a lack of a better term, video essays. I've continued to do so on and off since July 2021, and with that repetition, an undeniable feeling of fatigue and burnout have set in. I still enjoy the process, but the ideas are few and far between and the content can only get so far. In moving forward, I intend to write short, again for a lack of a better term, opinion pieces such as this. In writing, I find I can truly understand what I think. When the flow gets going, my opinions and thoughts on a subject begin to come out or be stifled. If it's the former, it's obviously something I felt needed to be said. Not to anyone in particular, but to be said purely for the sake of getting it out. If it's the latter though, I obviously never had anything to say in the first place. This thing I'm writing now edges towards the former. In her essay Why I Write, journalist Joan Didion writes about her inability to be a person of ideas, and rather sees herself as someone who simply writes to invade her own mind and discover what she is thinking. Had I been blessed with even limited access to my own mind, there would have been no reason to write. I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. Didion's self-portrait of a person not blessed with the intellect, nor a know-how of the exact dictations of grammar, form, or any other English device, is the most relatable account of one person's desire to put pen to paper I've ever heard. Call me unintelligent or lazy, but I find that I too rely solely on the ear when writing something down. What I write is read aloud multiple times and adjusted on that basis alone. In writing this now, I think I know what I think. If I hadn't began reading those biographies 10 years ago, I wouldn't have graduated onto literature. And if I hadn't got to literature, maybe I wouldn't have tried my hand at writing. And if I hadn't tried my hand at writing, I would have never begun this channel. And believe me, this channel has saved my ass more times than I would care to admit. Why I read and why I write are boiled down to understanding and being understood. Like Wallace said, we are marooned in our own skulls. Reading then is that trapped mind's ability to understand, relate and learn, whether that be through cold hard non-fiction or in the abstracts of fictional novels, from a sentence, paragraph or page, if you're lucky. And hopefully, it can help ease a mental strain simply through knowing that it has been a shared one. And only in reading can you viscerally understand that it is shared. Writing, on the other hand, is understanding your own thoughts. Open a Word document, type, and see what comes out. It does not have to be anything special, but it could identify some malignant stress in your brain that invades your mood and your dreams. Or better yet, help to pull out an idea in embryo, turning it into a fully grown and pursuable idea that may lead somewhere positive. In my opinion, even if it's for only 5 minutes, writing has only good things to give. The next best thing is music. Thank you for watching. This is a bit of a different video to usual, and it is a direction I want to start taking this channel in. I'm always thinking of ways to produce more content for the Cellador that aligns with the general ethos of the content I've made prior, but that has never been an easy task. Like I said, this could be deemed an opinion piece, a way to express my thoughts and opinions on subjects that swirl around in my head from time to time, but that don't necessarily fit into the typical video essay structure. If you want to see more of these types of videos, let me know in the comments and suggest any ideas if you have any really. I would also like to mention that I have a Substack where I write in a similar manner. The Substack is called Behind the Cellar Door and includes blog entries, book reviews, and the general goings-ons of my life behind the infrequent upload schedule. I want to make something more of both this channel and this Substack, so if that sounds intriguing, go give it a follow. The link will be in the description. For the time being, the Substack is free to read. I would like to start making paid posts when I find out what they would be. I have one idea where I was going to do kind of read-along things, so it'll be, I don't know, like once a week. Let's just say, I don't know, I was reading some Murakami book, and I would just do every week would just be one chapter, kind of like almost like a summary and thoughts on it, and you can kind of, comment and talk about the book itself. I don't know exactly. I've literally just thought of that idea, so maybe that would be a good idea, but I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I will keep as much of the content on there as accessible as possible, and never make the majority of posts on there behind a paywall, as I think that's just simply wouldn't be fair to the early readers. I think there's 33 of them right now. Thank you to you guys. I've recently been seriously considering what I wanted to do, and I believe it boiled down to its most basic element is writing. Thanks to the algorithm, I've been blessed with a small following, and I do not want to throw away the opportunities that come along with it. Therefore, I want to branch out and find my feet a little bit. Video essays will always be a feature of this channel, and that will never stop. You got to do what got you to the dance, but you've also got to learn some new moves as well. This is my attempt to do so. If you like the channel for those essays, then you have nothing to fear. My next one is going to be a biggie, hence the gap between my last upload and now. However, sometimes focusing on a singular idea can burn me out, so having something like this helps to keep the juices flowing and the writing muscles worked. That sounded very sexual. Once again, thanks as always. If you want to be able to read the script to this video, it is already on the Substack link below, and subsequent musings will arrive on there before they make the channel as well. Give it a follow and you would be helping me out a lot. Thanks again. Enjoy your day.